Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending. I hope you're well. I hope you had a fantastic weekend wherever you are in the world. It's great to be with you this morning from a very, very windy and grim Midlands. Although the clocks have gone back, so at least it's light when you get in the morning, which is at least something to smile about. Right, this morning we're going to talk about, again, pretty UK-centric stories. We're going to talk about a combination of incompetence, we're going to talk about gaslighting, and we're going to talk about problem, reaction, solution, which is a term that my dad David coined in the 90s to describe the way that they tried to bring about a situation that if they just outright announced this is what we want to do, they would receive backlash. However, they then create a problem. The reaction of the public is, well, something has to be done to counteract the problem, and the solution offered is what they wanted to do in the first place. Except this time they have public support, or at least some public support. The war in the Middle East, for example, from 2003 onwards is a good one to start with. You know, without the event of 9/11, without the events of the 7/7 bombings, without things like that, there would have been very little appetite to go and be part of that war. However, those events were catalysing in terms of creating that outcome and creating a degree of public support for them. So quite often, when there's an announcement that is unpopular, shall we say, which we've seen here in the UK with digital ID, it's been very, very unpopular. I've not seen really any spectrum of society that is in support of this except the Labour front bench. You know that there's going to have to be certain things happen that are going to get some public support, or at least soften the public reaction. We've seen them obviously talk about immigration and how this will solve immigration. Now, even the most pro-Britain first, don't let anybody in, knows this won't solve immigration, so therefore they're not supporting it. The people like us who know that this is a massive curb on freedom and the use of the immigration argument is literally that, it's just an argument to try and soften public opinion and use that as an excuse to get support, so we're not in favour of it. All the other political parties, now you might argue and probably be right, that they're only opposing it for their own political reasons, they're not in support of it. So the number of people in support of it is very, very limited. However, if certain events happen that make it more appetising for digital ID, because they're events that then the argument of, well, if we had digital ID, this couldn't have happened, well, all of a sudden you'll find softening among all those different demographics depending on what the event might be. So on Friday, how this happens, I have absolutely no idea. A prisoner was released from a prison in Chelmsford. Now, this prisoner was arrested a few months ago and imprisoned for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in Epping, North London. That was the root of quite a lot of the unrest and protests happening around the Bell Hotel and other migrant hotels in Epping in North London, because these sort of things were being reported to the police as happening quite regularly. And this man was arrested. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. He's from Ethiopia. And he was obviously serving an extended sentence. And then on Friday, accidentally, he was released and boarded a train from Chelmsford into London. And they realised very quickly, apparently, they'd made a mistake, put out public announcements and so on. And yesterday afternoon, he was arrested in London. And the claim is he will be deported back to Ethiopia this week. Now, I'm sorry, I don't believe the official story here. Now, I know it's probably just being a crazy conspiracy theorist, but most of the time, when the official story comes out about something, the passage of time or immediately, it's very obvious that it doesn't stand up to any kind of investigation. Now, for somebody to be released from a prison, this is from the research that I've done overnight looking into this, they have to go through three separate people, three separate areas of security, essentially, where the first one, okay, second one verifies the first one, does its own checks, third one, and finally they're released onto the street. So this whole, it was just a mistake, one person made a mistake, that argument doesn't hold any weight because it can't simply be one person making a mistake. It has to have been three separate teams, not separate people, three separate teams making three errors. So you add that together. You also talk about the ones that would have taken him to the first team to be released. You're talking multiple, double figures of people that would have had to make this mistake for this person to be released. So based on that, I'm not sure I think it's a mistake. And I'll say this simply. Digital ID that will allow the government and security services like the police and intelligence agencies to track you, all of a sudden, well, we don't need to put out a public inquiry to find you, do we? Facial recognition technology, the same. We can just find you very easily if a mistake's been made. So it would really not surprise me if in the next few days, weeks, this case is used to accelerate the justification for digital ID in more places. Because obviously and understandably, when the announcement came out that this man had been released, people were fearful. Of course, the guy's a sexual offender of a young girl. Of course, people are going to be worried. Of course. So when you create fear within the population, invariably, that population will demand that you do something. And when people are scared, they don't always think rationally. They want someone to just come and save the day because they're scared. And that makes sense. And when people are scared, they will give up a lot more of their rights. They will give up a lot more of their freedoms and let somebody impose upon them a lot more than they would if that fear was taken away. That's why in many cases, there's been a culture of fear created across lots of different instances around the country and around the wider world, whether it be the fear of conflict, the fear of being able to keep a roof over your heads, the fear of being able to buy food, the fear of walking down the streets, the fear of posting something on Facebook and getting arrested. 12,000 people in this country so far this year have been arrested for things they put on social media. While a violent sex offender is released by mistake to wander the streets for 2 whole days where he could have done anything. He could have got up to absolutely anything in that period. Of course, Labour have blamed the Conservatives because that's just politics, ladies and gentlemen. They blame each other. No one ever takes an ounce of responsibility. Justice Secretary David Lammy, who is possibly one of the most moronic men to have ever entered politics and think of the competition, has called out the fact there's going to be an independent inquiry in Parliament into this. And what's the betting that independent inquiry, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, suggests things like digital ID, more facial recognition technology, and the use of more impositions upon people's freedoms, all on the premise of keeping them safe. Because after all, it's about keeping you safe, isn't it? There's a great scene, if you've watched the film V for Vendetta, right at the very start, when V for Vendetta is basically the manifestation of Orwell's 1984 in the UK. That's the society that's been created. It's a very good film, Natalie Portman, very long time ago now. But essentially, there's a scene at the start when these people get arrested for being outside their homes after curfew, and the line that these police officers or enforcement officers use as they're roaming down the streets is, "This is for your protection. This is all for your protection." And they drum into people the fact that these measures, these draconian measures, are for their own protection. They're not overreaching of the state. They're not fascistic dictators that are trying to impose their will upon the people. No, it's all for your protection. We will lock you in your homes for your protection. We will stop you seeing loved ones for your protection. We will have a digital ID and a digital footprint and eventually a microchip in your brain, potentially, that will track every movement, that will monitor every thought, all for your protection. That's the sales pitch. And it always has been the sales pitch. We're invading countries thousands and thousands of miles away for your protection or for their protection. The argument that they use and have always used is that they are doing God's work, basically, on behalf of you. When you strip it back, in what instance has that ever been the case? We know that this agenda that we have seen unfold in the last 25 years in this country and the very wider world since the turn of the millennium has taken more and more power away from the masses and put it in the hands of the few. It's taken more and more wealth away from the masses and put it in the hands of the few. The health of the masses have decreased. The education of the young in the masses has decreased. The safety on the streets has decreased. It's so obvious that they're not working on behalf of us, they're working on behalf of something else. So what is that something else? That should be the next question. Instead, what we seem to find is people are just looking to the next election to vote out whoever is in now. Well, the people that voted for Starmer to get rid of the Tories after 14 years, how do you think that's going now, guys? And there'll be people that will get re-energized into politics in 2029 in this country and will vote for Nigel Farage thinking that's going to change anything, and will realise very quickly it won't. And then they'll look again to the next one and hope some other saviour comes along. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And I'm not saying that to sound negative. I'm not saying that to sound defeatist. I'm saying that because until we accept that, nothing is ever going to change. Because once you accept, actually, no one is coming to save the day, this is something I've got to do myself, then you're always going to be looking outside of yourself for the solution, which it isn't. There isn't a solution. If you're sat in a burning building, what do? Do you sit and wait for the fire brigade to come and save you and hope that someone finds you? Or do you try and get out on your own? I'd say most people would try and get out on their own, because you'd be left with what you considered or what you felt was no choice but to fend for yourself, but to try and, find a solution on your own. Because by the time someone might find you, it might be too late. Take that metaphor and apply that to the world that we see today. We can sit and wait for apparent saviours for the next century. And by the time we do, the world will look very different, irreversibly different. And digital ID is a huge, huge step towards that, irreversibly different. Because once it's there, it's going to be very different to backtrack on, very different to turn around. And the reason I think it's important to highlight this story is because problem, reaction, solution has been used right throughout the last few decades to create outcomes that the agenda wants. We know they want a digital ID. We know they want that. Okay, so they've created an immigration crisis in this country. They say we've lost control and we need a digital ID to get a grip of it. Okay, so digital ID is the outcome that you wanted. If you offered that or suggested that without the chaos that we have now, it would have got even bigger public backlash. Thank God it still is getting public backlash. However, it would have got even bigger. It wouldn't have even entered the conversation. Whereas you create a problem, you lose control, then all of a sudden you've got a justification, at least, to say this is a solution needed to sort out the problem that's been created. No sort of appreciation that you've created the problem or your policies have created the problem. Just, here's the solution. When it's not a solution. One, it's not going to solve the problem. Secondly, it's not designed to solve the problem. It's designed to be justified by the problem, because otherwise you wouldn't get it in. And I'd like to think they still won't get it in, because the public backlash to this is fantastic so far, but it needs to be consistent. It needs to keep going. It can't just be big and then calm down, blow out, and they bring it in anyway. This needs to be consistent, this pushback. And when we see stories like this, and then potentially this used to justify digital ID even more, and I'm sure there'll be other events that will be used to justify it as well. I'm sure there'll be other things used to justify it as well in the minds of people. We need to look at it from a step back and not get pulled into things emotionally, because emotions are great, but emotions can also make you blind in many ways when it comes to seeing what's really the case behind something. When that whole expression, when someone sees red, they're not thinking, they're just in the moment, they're just emotionally responding to whatever the situation may be. We can't be like that when it comes to things like this, because if we do that, we'll get blindsided. These people that are behind this agenda are incredible at manipulating human perception. They know how most people are going to react in any given situation, and they will exploit that. They will manipulate that. They will bank on that. And it's essential that we don't give that to them. When these stories come out, it's essential that we take the step back and go, okay, if I believe the official story they're selling, who does that benefit and why? Who benefits from this event? Who is negatively impacted by me questioning this event? Why are the people that will benefit from the event why are they the ones telling me the official story and slamming anyone who questions it? They're the questions that we need to ask. And as I said, most of the official stories in so many events and so many instances, the second you start to ask the most basic of questions, they crumble and fall apart. So many of them. 9/11, 7/7s, climate change, Gulf of Tonkin, weapons of mass destruction. How many do you want to name? You only have to look for 5 minutes and go, okay, that doesn't add up, that doesn't add up, and that doesn't add up. Just like we have with this prison case. One person's mistake who's been suspended. Well, immediately, former prison officers and prison guards and wardens have come out and said, well, that's not possible because of the safety protocols that are in place to prevent these kind of things from happening. The 3 steps that I spoke about earlier. So it can't be one person's mistake. It has to be multiple people involved in this mistake. And when multiple people are coordinated to have made a mistake, it becomes much less likely it was a mistake, doesn't it? It becomes much more likely it was coordinated. Whether the people involved knew or they were just given an order, I don't know. Probably the latter. But either way, this event will be used to justify something. Whether it's what I'm saying or whether it's something else, I've no doubt this will be used as an argument to justify something. So we need to watch this space over the next few days, see what comes out, see what's announced, see what's suggested, what might be leaked into the press to garner public opinion. It's essential that we do that so that we are very much on top of what could potentially be exploited out of this event. This is not a case of incompetence, in my opinion. I think this has happened on purpose. And I mentioned incompetence because people always talk about the fact that the government and the civil service is so chaotic, it's so disorganized, so therefore no way could such a sophisticated agenda be orchestrated through it. Well, chaos and incompetence is a great way to mask carefully planned agendas, isn't it? Boris Johnson's a great example. People saw the guy as a buffoon. He had messy hair, which he used to mess up before he went on air. People used to think he would never have had the brain to have been part of something that was very carefully orchestrated. And what did that do? Certainly for a while, it bought him a massive amount of leeway where people gave him a free pass because, no, it can't be orchestrated, Johnson. It's just silly. It's just incompetence. It's just a bit of chaos. The guy's a bit of a clown. No. The guy's a very, very intelligent, ruthless cult operative who did exactly what they wanted and needed him to do. And the passage of history, even for people that liked him at the time, has shown that to be the case. Whether it be his policies on COVID, whether it be his policies and continued rhetoric on Ukraine and Russia, whether it be his position on Israel, he only works for one side. So incompetence is a great way to mask a carefully planned agenda. So when they're coming out, claiming things are mistakes, when they're claiming things are chaotic, and when you're told that the government behind the scenes is pure chaos, well, on a base level it might be. But the people pulling the strings behind the chaos absolutely know what they're doing. And that's why no matter what seems to be in government, who seems to be in positions of power in whatever cabinet position, the same things continue. How many Home Secretaries have we had, for example, since the turn of the millennium? Well, the same immigration crisis has continued and continued and continued. How many Foreign Secretaries have we had? We still seem to be in overseas wars that have nothing to do with us. How many Health Secretaries have we had? The NHS is still utter chaos and a massive waste of public money. How many Business Secretaries have we had? How many Chancellors have we had? The same agendas have continued regardless of who is in charge. This is not incompetence. Certainly not in this individual case, and certainly not in the wider case. It's not incompetence. It's not chaos. It's carefully planned. And the mask of incompetence and chaos is used to stop you realizing, actually, none of this has happened by accident. None of this is random. None of this is organic. It's all carefully scripted. And it's all scripted to take the world and the country in a certain direction, and not one that's good for me or not one that's good for you. And once that realization hits home, that's a light bulb moment. No one's coming to save us. No one's coming to change things on our behalf. It's down to us. It's down to us, and it always has been. Right, thank you for watching with me. If you're watching with us on Twitter or on YouTube, we're going to carry on iconic.com, where we're going to cover some stories about the NHS. We're going to cover some stories about US immigration, and we're going to talk about more Home Office squandering of resources, which just is important to highlight just before the budget when they come back and try and take more money off you. So head over to iconic.com, click the link in the description, and we're doing more over there. See you tomorrow.